C.S. Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia is some of my earliest fantasy fiction reading. Early doesn't necessarily mean timeless. Does this material still hold up for a modern reader? Welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son talk about fantasy, science fiction, horror, and other nerdy things that we enjoy. I'm Jim, the father of this show, and I'm glad you're here with me today. I hope you will enjoy what I'm going to talk about and you'll give us a like. And if you haven't subscribed yet, we encourage you to do so. Check out all the videos we have here just for your entertainment. So let's talk about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which was written by C.S. Lewis back in 1950. It's a long time ago now. The genre is fantasy and specifically children's literature, as it was written directly for children. I first read this so long ago, well, as a child. I couldn't say why I read it, other than I'm pretty sure my parents gave me the entire set. As I was a child, I was already a rabid reader, and fantasy was my favorite type of book, so I took to this quickly. I know I'd read just a little before this the entire 14-book set of the Wizard of Oz books by L. Frank Baum. Now, moving into the world of Narnia, there were a number of similarities. I mean, they're both a type of portal fantasy, stepping from our world into another one of magic and fanciful experiences and talking creatures and all that. But Narnia, it's got so much more to offer than Oz. I have returned to this book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, many times over the years, most significantly as a teacher. I would use this as a read aloud book, one of my first read aloud books over the course of a school year with fifth graders. I also did it with second graders. They both thought it was a great story, and I could keep their attention during a chapter of read aloud time every day. I don't know if that'll still hold true with today's fifth graders. Maybe it still would. I would hope so, but it's been a number of years since I've been full time in front of a group of students in a classroom now. When I encountered this book, it was the first of the 7 books of the Chronicles of Narnia. Some doofus decided that this should be rebranded in a chronological order, and that's how you buy the set now, where this is the second book in the series. I'm sorry, that is stupid. This is the book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, through which you should first encounter Narnia. I will die on that hill. Let's get into some of the details of the book. The setting takes place in England during World War II, specifically during the Battle of Britain, as children protagonists of our story have been relocated from London out to the countryside, living in a manor there where they are just guests. This was being done with a lot of children out of London back at that time due to the Nazi bombing raids that were going on incessantly. Of course, only a portion of the story takes place there at that country manor, because the rest is in the magical land of Narnia, and we'll get into how that happens in the summary. And they spend a lot of time in Narnia in this book. Actually, in Narnia time, it's a good couple of decades eventually. C.S. Lewis does a nice job of realistically giving us some historical context with the English setting, while then creating something truly special with Narnia. That location is just magical and captivates the imagination. I give a strong 5 out of 5 star for everything C.S. Lewis built with the setting. As for a summary, Spoiler-Lite, there are still people out there I know who haven't read this, so I'm not going to spoil it for you. 4 children, the siblings, Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy, from oldest to youngest, that's the order. They are housed for their own safety with a distinguished elderly professor at his country estate. Relocated as many children were during World War II's Battle of Britain to be safe from those frequent bombing raids that the Nazi Air Force, the Luftwaffe, was busily using to try to wear down the Brits. While there, they do what children do, get bored. And then they try to come up with things to do, preferably staying out from underneath the feet of the housekeeper, who is not particularly happy that this place has been invaded by children, but we must do our part as good English citizens. Now, this eventually leads them to play hide and seek throughout this marvelous manor house. Tons of great places to hide. And that leads Lucy to hide inside a big wardrobe that turns out to be a magical portal into a new world, Narnia. A place where they find it's always winter, but never Christmas. That would suck. Eventually, all four children end up in Narnia, where they interact with the people they find there. There are no humans there. This is a world of talking sentient animals, dwarves and other mythological creatures, fantasy, fairy beings, and apparently a witch who kind of looks human, but not like you and I. And they learn Narnia is under the spell of this white witch, being eternally trapped in winter. One of the children is misled by the white witch, while the other three fall in with the good guys and eventually will encounter many others who band together to rescue the captive sibling from the clutches of the witch while fighting to free Narnia. None of this would be possible without the presence and intervention of Aslan, the great lion, the king of the beasts. But how he intercedes is something special and powerful, and in case you haven't read this, I cannot tell you any more of that and stay spoiler light. The plot of this story is actually pretty rich. I mean, it's straightforward and simple as it was written for children, but it's also deep with meaning as an intentional Christian allegory. Children can simply be captivated by the action and adventure, while older readers will recognize these deeper themes that they can ponder and find treasured meaning. Whether you're Christian or not, you'll find some meaning in those themes. Anytime an author can write one thing on the surface, but then say much deeper things to those who are ready to think and ponder further, and do this with skill, I'm impressed. I remember the first time through this story, the big dramatic sacrifice moment. That was darn powerful. And then to see how things twist around, it's incredible. Even though it's written in a very accessible manner for children, I thought C.S. Lewis did a ton with this plot. And as an adult, I have dug much more out of it than as a kid the first time through. I'll give this plot depth 5 out of 5. It's worthy. It's one of those you can go back to a number of times and find more. As for characters, first off, Lewis gives us the children, the characters we are supposed to most relate to. We will encounter Narnia through their experiences. I believe he connects us with the views of those young people very well, and we are able to put ourselves in their shoes. It kind of reminds us as adults what it was like to see the world around us as children again. We get to re-experience the naive trust of the young, the petty jealousies, the irritation among siblings. I lived that. That can be real. And the joy of discovery, new things, and new personal abilities. He also demonstrates the reality of what it's like to make wrong choices, suffer the consequences, and perhaps to find redemption. The rest of the characters actually give us some balance. We've got good guys who struggle with choices. So not 100% perfectly good. And then we've got bad characters who can act good, but clearly have self-serving motivations. They're more or less just bad guys. The White Witch in particular is a character who is painted as all bad, even while acting righteous. But there is much more to this character than we get to see just in this book. We're just getting one little snapshot. There is another book in the series where you can read more about her and understand a little bit more about her motivations. Here, we get a pretty one-sided perspective. Not that it's unfair to her, but we're seeing it through the kids' eyes. Lucy has always been my favorite of the four children, and I think that's the way it's supposed to be from Lewis's writing perspective. But I have also, when it comes to the other characters, really enjoyed Mr. and Mrs. Beaver. The whole dialogue between them when they first meet up with the children and take them in is charming, as well as just the interchange back and forth between Mr. and Mrs. Beaver. They are so funny. Lewis captures the old couple together so well. Overall, I give for character development the rating of 4 out of 5 stars. There are some charming individuals, and then those we love to boo at, and some characters that powerfully impact the reader, but some certainly do fall prey to being just a little too black and white. Now, C.S. Lewis's writing style. Honestly, this whole novel reads like your grandpa sitting down to tell you a story, which pretty much is exactly what it is. C.S. Lewis picks a note and tone for telling this tale, both a story of adventure and discovery and a morality tale, teaching lessons of right and wrong, the price of mistakes, and the path to forgiveness and redemption. Lewis tells his story and makes his points in a gentle, teaching manner, rather than coming off as preachy, acknowledging some points about the human condition that are just true. We all kind of know it as common knowledge, and he uses these actions to highlight these lessons that we can be reminded of. And they're stated in ways that it's kind of hard to disagree. Even though he is just telling us this story, he's still able to get us caught up in the high stakes and tension of various moments throughout. That chase through the woods as they're trying to get to something safer. The White Witch also rushing through the woods as things are starting to break down. The moments at the stone table. The final battle in the book. It's just such a well written story that sucks the reader in. For writing style, I got to give it a 5 out of 5. C.S. Lewis, an early master of fantasy fiction, he really created something special. Let's talk about themes. I experienced some powerful themes in this book. They would include good versus evil, that struggle, something we face every day, honestly. And we see here how people deal with that struggle on a very personal level, as well as on the grand scale of what's happening in the world around us. Then, sacrifice and redemption would be a theme. There is a price to be paid for the errors we make. This theme of the story, paying that price, being redeemed from having fallen astride, is very powerful when you're looking at it through the Christian perspective. Mind-blowingly impactful. But anybody can still see this and find some takeaways here. I like the theme of courage and growth that comes through as we see these 4 children experiencing an adventure well beyond their expectations, seeing them encouraged and supported to step forward into new roles for which they don't really feel prepared, and having to lean into acts of bravery and responsibility they are asked to take on, and watching how they grow through that experience. Finally, there's an obvious theme of faith and belief. Again, whether or not you are Christian, a reader can still catch and appreciate this theme of believing in a better future, of having faith in the people around you, and the belief that things can get better. That if we work at it hard enough, as we hold together and hold to what is true, we can overcome challenges. We can trust that it will not always be as bad as it is right now. Those are powerful themes. Warnings? Well, for adult readers, I don't have anything to warn you about in this tale. It could potentially have some scary moments if you're reading it to some very young children, but not very much. Now, again, it is a Christian allegory, so if that's going to be off-putting to you, just know that that's there. But I'm telling you, there's value in the story whether or not you follow the Christian faith. Totally. My rating, a 4 out of 5 for the book as a whole. I really love this novel, and it's a 5 out of 5 for what it's aiming to be. But the bar is not as high as some fantasy books that you can find. It was not trying to shoot that high. So it's not nearly as robust a reading experience as other fantasy novels you can find, and therefore it holds it back to a 4. I do truly feel this story is still worth a read. And if you love it, you may enjoy the rest of the Chronicles of Narnia. 7 books in total. They are not all at the same level as this book. Varied quality levels to the stories. Many people believe the second book in the sequence, Prince Caspian, is by far the best book of the 7 books of the Chronicles of Narnia. I feel The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is peak Narnia, but Prince Caspian's right up there too. and I will talk about that book soon. That's what I have for you today. Have you an opinion on this book? Have you read it? Put your thoughts down in the comments. If you have anything to share related specifically to what I said, I'd love your feedback and input. And while you're looking down there, check out the show notes, where there are a whole bunch of other ways you can interact with Zach and I, including an invitation to our Discord server, our social media links, even our Patreon. And thank you, patrons who support us every month and make it possible for us to keep this coming out to you. That's where I'll leave you. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.